say like, oh, the next set is the best set that's ever released. The next set is the best set that's ever. When we say that for every set, but like, how long do you think MST is going to hold the mantle for?
Because we're constantly improving.
Yeah, but I think MST is just the best set.
Yeah, that's the thing. Even on like before Heavy Hitters was released, I was like on a few podcasts, and I was like, I had to say like the set after Heavy Hitters.
That's the same.
I was like,
Same.
you know, Heavy Hitters is a good set, but the one after.
Yeah, people ask
Good.
me as well.
I got invited to go on a podcast the other day, and I was like, this is pretty cool, you know.
Message.
Yeah, and I was just like, you know, I
Message them.
humbly accept the thing. I love it though. I love the sound of my own voice.
Oh yeah.
I feel watching the Pro Tour finals was it just me, but like, you watch that, and you just, you know, I have the stream, like, I'm playing the Pro Tour final, and I'm like, you know, kind of a little bit down on life. I'm going for the comeback, and then like, then I hear that one chant starts in the background, and it's, let's go classic. On classic, and then the clap starts going, and
And you're just like, block lethal dead.
test the streak, react over the top.
And he defends with the trounce.
Yeah.
The crowd goes wild. Pummel of the top. Oh, another trounce. Oh.
No, not again, not second place again. I'm getting flashbacks to the calling. Nah, but it's it was actually a sick final though, eh?
I think that's the thing about the final is because you could kind of see both hands and you can kind of like follow along and see how you would have played it and compare it to how like Arthur and Max played it, and there was a lot of differences, honestly. Like I think it shows, like, to me it showed like the level of players that they were.
It's so funny sometimes when like you're watching it from the sidelines, eh, and like you can see both hands, and then like someone does something, and it's like, why didn't you block, you idiot? Or whatever. And it's like, oh, it's like, come on, I'm playing in a Pro Tour final, and like I've been playing for 2 days straight, and like I can't see his hand.
That is true. It's just like, yeah, of course he has that react to that.
I was just like watching basketball sometimes, and it's like the fourth quarter, super late, and this guy's like not running back on defense, and I'm like, run, you're lazy. Like, you know, put me on a treble for 3 minutes. I'm like,
Huge bag of chips. We're like,
idiot. No, I feel like the one other thing I do sometimes is like, you know, on Twitter or whatever, someone like wins a Pro Tour top 8, so I'm following them along, and I'm like, oh yeah, like, no, I'm gonna like follow them on Twitter, and I feel I have this like weird thing in my mind where I'm like, I'm bestowing a great honor on you.
you deserve my follow.
You're getting followed by the Mr. Classic, and like, you know, in my head it's big deal. Like they're like, who's this guy?
Session Blood.
Session Blood. Oh, is that Karol? Oh, great, it's just Kieran. It's just the old Monsieur Classic, you know. But I guess, I don't know, we should probably like talk about the Pro Tour. And, just
3 days of competitive play, 14 rounds of Swiss, and one of the most compelling top 8s flesh and blood play has ever seen have led us to one final match. There's a spilled blood in Maximilian Klein's hand.
Are you kidding me?
You would have to find exactly Sigil of Solace. It's the only out at this point.
What a call out. Sigil of Solace to keep him in the game. Here's the sink. Off the top.
You can't be serious! You cannot be serious!
5 is offered here, block 3. What's the last card? What's the last card in Max's hand? It's
Sigil of Solace. Game 3. Maximilian reaches.
It has to be in the swing. What else can it be? He's got one. It has to be an attack reaction.
He's hesitating on it. You don't hesitate if you have it.
And he's alive in this game! Are you kidding?
Burn them all at the ready. Max at 1.
Not a 1 in her hand. Not a 1. It's a grimace, a ruthless. And the hand is extended. We're in the House of the Dragon. And at the head of the table sits Arthur Trahay, your Pro Tour Los Angeles champion, with the most incredible cold shot I have ever seen.
I think the one thing we really deserve a pat on the back on is our predictions.
Oh,
We
yeah.
were just so on the money. I'm pretty sure we said what, like 4 KOs, 2 Dorthia.
Reinars, Viscerais, Tiklovos, and honestly, Tiklovos did make dig too. Which
Yeah,
is,
not bad.
Just one of each brute, and there'll definitely be a ninja.
Listen, pudding wasn't there, man.
True. You did say. I think you did say 3 brute. I'm gonna say I did put a Kano in the top 8 and a KO, and that was probably about as far as I got correct.
yeah, I was definitely dreaming big and definitely got burnt on my predictions, but it is what it is.
But I think it's cool though, because it kind of speaks to, like we were saying, right, how open the meta was, how difficult it was to predict this one. I feel other Pro Tours, I'm like, yeah, there'll be 4 Lexis in the top 8. I'm like, I'm a genius. Like,
I did it.
I did it. The Oracle. But this one was just tough, man. There were like so many good decks out there. And I don't know, I feel one of the ones we got to start with is like probably like the deck of the moment, which was KO. Like and we'll get to some of the other great decks as well, but like, man, KO just showed up big time, right? Like most played deck, 4 players in the top 8. Just kind of like you're looking on stream, there's another KO dropping like the Cast Bones, dropping the Blood Rush Bellows. But one quite cool thing is like there were some differences in the lists, right? Like
Yeah.
we say Michael Hamilton wasn't playing Cast Bones.
Yeah, I believe Wolfpack kind of settled on a very efficient, streamlined version of the deck that didn't rely on cast bones and played into those blood rush turns, was able to play reckless swings and kind of open up. As you get rid of cast bones, you do have a lot more opportunities to play non-6s in your deck.
Yep.
And it also just kind of, when cast bone works, when the card plays as you want it to, you get your 6 smites and agility, it's great.
When you're
But
on,
it
you're
can-
on,
Yeah, exactly. But it can get a bit awkward, and we kind of saw that in the Michael Hamilton versus Alan Lau game, where in the KO mirror, you do actually get in the spots where you have a pulping and a wild ride and a bare fangs, and you have a cast bones, and it can get a bit clunky where you're trying to play it out, but also pressure with some of your other cards. And we saw Alan defending with, I think, 2 or even, I can't remember how many, but definitely at least 2 cast bones there.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
I think in the top 8 as well, right? We saw it was crazy. It was like, man, I'm getting mad deja vu here with Arthur playing Dromai into was it 3 KOs?
Yeah.
3.
So he played.
Oh wait, no, KO
K-
Dorthia. Of
KO
course.
Dorthia,
The first 2 KOs in the quarter and semis, it was like a mirror image. Like KO starts, drops cast bones. You're like, oh, of course he had it. Must be nice. And then, but then the wild ride later on, 3-4 turns later, and it's like brick, discard, sweet whistle at tempo.
Yeah, and the Joe Raptor game, we did see those kind of moments where like he had the cast bones, but it just was just a little bit too clunky to just play out. But yeah, as you mentioned, for the like little differences in the KO builds, I'd have to give a shout out to Daniel, who was running the Savage Beatdown. I think it's a great card. We had Sebastian Grondel was running the Hard and Cross Strap, one of your
love seeing Hard and Cross Strap though, and it's one of my favorite cards from back in the day.
Yeah, and even Joel opting to go for the Gambler's Gloves.
Yep.
Over the kind of standard Apex braces kind of arm piece. So there's a lot of. It was cool to see a lot of kind of variation within those builds.
Yeah, for sure. And I feel like we were watching that game, right, with the Gambler's Gloves. I feel, it's easy to say in hindsight, but I feel he got a little bit punished for it, right?
Yeah, well, he didn't end up cracking it, right?
No. There was that one turn, if you remember, where he rolled for Scabbies when he had a cast bones and something else in hand, and rolled a 3.
you just can't re-roll there.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
so hard to re-roll, right? You're like,
It's the tricky thing. It's like, yes, when you roll a 1, you're like snap reroll.
Yeah.
But when you're on that 1 action point, it's just a bit risky.
Not in a Pro Tour top 8.
Yeah.
yeah, but big shout out to Daniel as well from Sunflower Samurais, right? Like, I think you were mentioning maybe Paolo even mentioned that he has a big hand in like building a lot of their decks and everything.
Yeah.
Really cool to see him get his breakout performance.
Yeah, definitely. And he's top hated that Team Blitz calling. He's, he won it with some other samurais. But he also top forward the calling New Jersey, which was like one of the, if not the biggest kind of CC event to date. So that was a huge result for him. But yeah, it's good to see another Sunflower Samurai have their time in the spotlight for sure.
For sure. And the other interesting thing I thought is just I had to look through some of the data sets. Mark Henderson, like we know Mark from back in the day on Twitter, put together a big spreadsheet. Really interesting figure is Kayo had like smallish sample size, but 75 decks there, right? People playing it, 49% win rate over the course of the tournament.
I think it's interesting because like the numbers of KO just seem so overwhelmingly dominant that like everyone wants to bring KO, it just has the best numbers. But then when you actually get down to the nitty and gritty, it's like those kinds of decks are very difficult to play efficiently at the highest level. It's very hard to min-max your numbers to the exact like percentages that they have to be at.
Like calibrating.
Yeah. You don't have to know exactly when to block, when to attack, and just play the game perfectly to maximize the numbers. Otherwise, you're like there's no reason to be playing a numbers deck like that. So I think it's very deceptive for like your everyday player who picks it up thinking that it's an amazing deck, and it is. But to truly maximize the power, you really have to just play to the highest level.
I don't know, brother. I feel like you just roll scabs, right? You just roll scabs. It's like, am I a good KO player? Oh, yeah, there we go. I would have done it.
Thanks, let's go.
Yeah, and I have to give a shout out to Tarek Patel, who kind of wrote, as he talked about maximizing those decision points and maximizing the value, and his Twitter post about Scabskin Leathers is amazing. You try to play this like Ooga Booga like brute class, and then we delve deeper, and it's like all these formulas and working out like the optimal decision points. So
yeah, just want to give a quick shout as well to Peter Ward as well from the UK. The fourth KO made the top 8, also came second at the Calling Utrecht. Big event there, top 8'd UK Nats in 2023, I think.
Yeah.
Both on Fi, so a bit of a Fi master and
Fi gamer.
And I guess speaking of KO as well, maybe we'll come back to that later, but we've all seen us getting a few more tools in the Armory deck. So strength rules all Savage Slash, but maybe we'll come back to that when we come back to KO.
49% win rate. I don't think that's high enough.
He needs a bit of a buff,
Yeah, exactly.
And actually, just before we move on to Dorthia as well, I think one really cool thing is in the top 8 we had 8 different nationalities represented.
Yeah.
Which just really shows, I think, Fab's reach as a global game, right? Players from all around the world. Felipe Cardoso, I think from Brazil, top 8 on Kano. My man, awesome performance.
Amazing performance from South America, honestly.
I know. Sorry,
go for it.
We talked so much about like the best team on the last podcast, and there was a bit of heat on Twitter, but I think what we can agree on is that there's no best country at the moment.
Yep.
Everyone's equally ready to hit Worlds.
But is there a best region?
But people were saying regions, North America, Europe, APAC region. Europe smashed it. 5 players coming in and flying in. And I think that's the massive thing is like this was in Los Angeles, and like you kind of expect there to be a lot more players from that region to kind of gather in and play at the highest level. But Europe came in and smashed it.
Yeah, one American in the top 8, one Canadian, one person from like Felipe from Brazil, South America, and 5 Europeans. So yeah. We'll see if they can they can bring it back in the next one.
For Amsterdam, 8 players from Europe. Hey,
Predictions for Osaka Worlds?
But Proud to be an American, or at least I know I'm free.
Yeah.
Anyway, moving on.
I would be keen to talk a little bit about Dorthia because
Definitely.
we talked about in the last kind of session about the rogue decks, and I feel like Dorthia for me has been that breakout performance. It's kind of like
Absolutely.
sliding under the
Absolutely.
radar. You have people who focus very much on the Dawnblade build, and shout out to Nick Butcher.
Yep,
who came
10th place.
purely Dawnblade.
Nearly pulled off the full Pablo.
Yeah.
Started off 0-2 and was
Yeah.
like very, very close.
Yeah, I believe one game of making that top 8, and that's something that and the hatchets was something that was so powerful, and it's another one of those decks that is just so produces such consistent numbers, and thanks to Dorthia's hero ability, you can just create some like insane chain links. And Maximilian showcased, for me, was interesting is like a lot of the time people pick up his hatchets and be like, okay, this gets +1 if you've attacked with the other hatchet this turn, and it's this turn. So even if your second hatchet hits and you attack with that same hatchet again, that still gets the bonus. And there's just so much little bits of value there.
And it was crazy watching that, like just seeing like, first of all, like both Josh Lau and Max Klein played that like so cleanly. But just like watching some of these turns play out where it's like, all right, attack, Blade Runner. It's like, okay, now hit and run. now attack you for like so much more. And then now this hits, and now I'm attacking again. I'm like, wait, that's like 48 points of value, you know?
And then taking count of the Dynamo. But yeah, Jason, you kind of have quite a lot of experience with hatchets and Dorthia.
So there's someone in this room who's played a bit of Hatchet Dory and Dev.
Yeah, I mean, I did play it a lot during the heavy hitters meta in Div, but my deck focused more primarily on spike turns with the Spill Blood combined with the Supremacy and trying to catch your opponent off guard with the Singing. But I really appreciate the decks that came out in this Pro Tour. I think cutting Supremacy, cutting Singing, in favor of a more consistent deck is definitely the way to go, especially when you're trying to run hotter for more rounds. I think on coverage especially, watching an ex-Dorthia play the game is just so satisfying to watch. All of the value being extracted from every turn is just beautiful to see. And yeah, I know Karol has definitely taken a lot of hits from my ex story, but...
It's like this deck is like it's so strong.
I remember playing against a little bit of that as well when we were playing a bit of Kasai, and you know, cards like Grains of Bloodspill and Blade Flyer and stuff. You know, I feel like things chop and change a little bit, but there was the time discussion: should this be like swords or weapons? And you know, I was like, maybe it should be swords. You know, I'm there playing Kasai like the Fab Gods intended. You know, you have an honest attack with your sword, and that gets the buff, and this makes the vigor. And suddenly, Mr. Hatchet Man over here is just like,
man, it's a cool deck. You can't.
I'm gonna spill blood and see it. And I'm like, we can't have that. But no, that was honestly, it was so cool. And like we were talking a little bit about how like Valiant Dynamo, right? It's like the anti-might technology. Like,
True, yeah.
like you're getting your 1 value every turn for your might. Well, guess what? I'm getting my 1 value as well. Like every turn, and my numbers are just going to be a little bit better than your numbers throughout. I mean, Dorthia had the best win rate. Well, not the best, but of like the higher play decks, it had the best win rate in Classic Constructor of the Pro Tour, 58%.
Yeah.
Bolton was actually 62.5.
Yeah.
But smaller sample size. And I think Dorthia if we look at like its results into KO, over like 47 games, it was like 64% into it. So that was just like, and I feel that that made sense past the eye test, right? Like we're watching that and it's just like, man, like how do these KO players beat this?
Yeah.
Like,
I think it was a great deck for the metagame because of the representation of KO. But I think it's like, a lot of the top players before the tournament were talking about how it's so hard to select the deck because each deck has that kind of one weakness.
Yep.
And I believe that if you find a deck that you can patch up that weakness, all of a sudden you have a great matchup spread and you favor it into some of your better matchups. And I think Hatchet's Dorthia did that with Dromai. I think the kind of general consensus was that Warriors are kind of weak to Dromai. You kind of get swarmed by the Ashwings, but I think Maximilian really showcased in the finals the ability for the Hatchets to work against Dromai. You have the Dorthia hero ability, the on-head to kind of clear. He was so good at clearing the dragons
so clean.
while presenting damage. And at the same time, you have cards like Cleave that you rarely see played all of a sudden have like a crucial impact on the game as well.
For sure, and like the one thing as well I noticed is that like one of Dorthia's bad matchups going off the stats, not a whole lot of games played, was the Victor matchup. So they're only very small sample size, so only about 13 games played based on the data I've seen anyway. And, you know, it's about 30%, so very rough. But I think Dorthia players, like, they were just like, look, we're okay with that. There's just not, we feel like there might not be that much Victor. I think that was right. There was like less than 10% of the field. And they're just like, look, we've got Cleave. We're going to trust our Dromai matchup, and we're going to try and beat up on KOs all day long. And it was very successful for a lot of them. And yeah, just a couple small things, differences in the list as well. Max Klein playing Tunic and Josh Lau playing Grains. I think a lot of merits to both of those. And the other one was Balance of Justice. Both of them played it, but Max also played Cop or Crown of Providence, which actually played a pretty critical role, I think, in that quarterfinal where there was a really punishing CNC super early, and Josh didn't have access to the Cop to move past it.
Yeah, I think it's like when you're choosing Hatchet's Dorthia to approach, or I think the least of your worries is the mirror. I feel like you want to focus on these like highly represented matchups. So honestly, props to Josh for sticking with Dorthia. I believe that he actually, even the day before the Pro Tour, didn't know what hero to play. He knew he was going to play Dorthia or Bolton. He flipped a coin and came out Dorthia. And then he flipped another coin to choose Dawnblade or Hatchets.
Oh man, that's what we call.
And I love that.
That's what we call when keeping it real goes right. You know? Trust in the Fab Gods. You know, trust in the Fab Gods. They'll trust in you.
Yeah.
And the other one is Josh played Decimator. I'm not 100% sure what matchups he played that in. Be interesting to hear from him at some point. But perhaps some of the more control matchups like Victor maybe. But
makes sense.
Of course, we have to talk about our champ Arthur. Actually, maybe just before we do that, we'll have to talk about Felipe quite quickly. The only Kano player who made the top 8. I think Kano actually did pretty well. They were in the 10+ point bracket. There were 2 Kanos. Wasn't super widely represented, but I feel just shout out to him for playing such a difficult deck and making top 8. I feel it was a bit of a slightly rough game. You know, he went for the pop-off turn. The Ragamuffins drew a red off the top right, and then kind of that was that. Wasn't able to kill. So, but I mean, huge shout out to Felipe. And I've heard like the Brazilian community as well. There's way more people showing up at armories now. So really
and
cool to see.
a fun story about Felipe. He actually he started playing in I believe last August. And 10 days after he learned to play the game, there was a PTI event, and he borrows a Kano deck. He ends up winning the whole thing. Doesn't own a single card, Flesh and Blood card, and he opens a gold foil Crucible of Aether.
I mean,
so it's like it was destiny.
If that's not a sign.
Yeah. A huge shout out to the whole Brazilian community. I think it's growing at such a rapid rate. I'll be surprised not to see more Brazilians pop up in these top 8s.
And of course, our champion, Arthur, huge shout out, our winner on, I mean, Lisa Algaiba is what I've heard on Twitter, the chosen one.
Lisa Algaiba.
Like, there was just, it felt like, you know, destiny. Of course, he played incredibly well, so I don't want to undermine that by saying it was all destiny and stuff, but like, it just felt like he played perfectly, played to all his outs, and just so clean. Jason, I know you're a big, bit of a Dromai fan, you know, Tom Olai on Twitter. I feel like I came up with that nickname.
You did.
You're welcome, you know.
Thank you.
But, I mean, what did you think of watching him play throughout those matchups?
I think that everything he did was basically perfect in a lot of spots. Like, it's exceptional to watch and just essentially not question someone's judgment. Because when you're watching someone play, it's always like, oh, I would have done that, I would have done this. Yeah. But then you watch him play and you're like, I would have done that. And then you're like, wait, his play is much better than what I did.
Yeah.
So it's like...
Yeah, I was going to say, like, I sit there and question that I'm wrong.
Yeah. So, like, just watching him play, it was just so clean, like, all the way throughout the entire tournament. And then you just need a little bit of luck in the end to pull you through to first place. Calculated luck.
Yeah, honestly, for me, even the quarterfinals and the semifinals against the KOs that did drop the cast bones on the very first turn of the game, and each one of those wins, he just played to, like, it didn't look good in either one of those games, but he played to his outs. He tried to maximized the value everywhere he could, and ended up coming on top of both of those games. And even in the finals, which is as potentially, it seems like usually Dromai favored matchup. He was still under the pump the whole time, and each decision point that he made was actually like, looking back at the game, was just exceptional.
And like they were like all three matchups started so poorly. Like Castbones turn 0 from like both the KO players. Then Spillblood turn 1, like knocked off the arms. The name of the arms slipped my mind. That makes
Wave of Reality.
Knocked off the Wave of Reality, pushed like 4 damage or something. Just everything looked quite tough, but he just sat there very calm. Man, there was like such a hero play he made in the semis as well. I think where he was facing down KO with like a full hand basically, and he pitches a sync to play Rake.
Yeah.
And I was like, whoa, like man, like the confidence in this dude, man.
Yeah.
Like I mean,
like so much life behind, and he goes for the play that it's not the safest play, but it is the game-winning play.
Sometimes
honestly.
you
gotta
gotta
play to your outs.
play the player, not the game sometimes,
Yeah.
right? Because he made the Ash Wings,
Yeah.
and he managed to get a card. I think it was against Joel, get a card off him, which meant like the Blood Rush turn didn't happen that turn, and then he managed to keep tempo and keep going. So I was like, I was sitting there, I'm like, oh, I feel I'm a bit of a defensive player sometimes. I'm like, oh, nice, chuck that sink below an Arsenal, let's go. And he pitched it, I was like, okay.
Going for it.
Just keep it real, but like, oh man, of course, the sigil. One of the best fab highlights of all time, right? Like the $50,000 sigil. Like that was so crazy. Like just watching it, that game had so many back and forths.
Yeah.
And like towards the end, it looked like he was falling a bit behind. And then when Max played the Spillblood, I feel he like in his head he was asking the question that we like to ask in Dev enough. Is it going to be enough? Is it going to be enough, this damage?
Yeah.
And I thought it was going to be enough. I was like, surely, he like, when he plays the sync and it's like, wait, based on the way you've blocked here, the only out is going to be the sigil. And like, we're thinking roughly, I'm like, I don't think he's quite back to the pitch stack from the first one he pitched, but there's one somewhere in there. And we were watching like in the office, right? And it's like, all right, he sinks, and then the card comes up and it's like, oh, no way!
You can't be serious!
Yeah. And I love the slow play as well. You look at Arthur's face and there's zero reaction. He just draws it. He considers his play and then plays it after a thoughtful consideration, whereas
know,
like, I feel like faster than that seed, I would have ripped that thing.
Like if I pulled the sigil, I'd be going full like gain 3 life. Let's go classic. But yeah, man, like cool, calm, and collected, like smooth operator. That was like very, very cool. So huge shout out to Arthur.
Yeah, massive congratulations for winning the Pro Tour. Honestly, it's
So great for the French community. Like it's awesome. But speaking of like winners, I know like we tend to focus a lot on the top 8 and the winners, but I feel sometimes we have a thing where like, if you're not top 8, you're invisible. Like no one knows you exist or whatever. But I wanted to give like a little shout out to the near misses, like the people who were like so close but just missed. And like, of course, someone like Ian Zhang, I think that's his like 3rd, 9th place or something crazy like that. I know he made the top 8 of the Pro Tour Lille, but like, he's had so many things where he's been like 9th, top 16, 9th or something like that. But we see you, Ian. We see you. Of course, my guy Alan Lau, one of my one of my predictors for a breakout performance. I think he lost to Winnan in the final round, but obviously still I think up there with some of the best players in the world.
absolutely.
I think one of you guys mentioned Nick Butcher, of course, like 10th place. I feel he just consistently crushes these tournaments, and he's just the margins are so thin in competitive fab, right? Like. And the last one I want to give a shout out to is T Thebo. Sorry if I'm saying your name wrong, but it's just a guy I've seen playing for a long time, and he's on Twitter and stuff, and I follow him along a bit. And I think he started off 8-0, ended up just losing 2 win-and-ins, which is a bit soul crushing.
Yeah.
But like, we see you, T. We see you.
Yeah,
like,
definitely. Like it's such you could see he's a great player, just from all the streamed games and so close.
Yep.
Yeah.
And there are a few other events of the Pro Tour as well. Like, so we had the Calling LA, which was one by none other than Kasai. So, I picked it to top 8 the Pro Tour. Obviously, I was right. It was a very good CC deck, because it goes on to win.
Yeah.
But big shout out to Matt Dilks, and he took down Kano, and that's a tough matchup, right?
Super tough. hear all about it on Margin Bay's recap on his YouTube channel.
I heard he had a very interesting time.
Aside from the rest of the shenanigans that went on that weekend. But yeah, that matchup went pretty well for Kasai, I would say. Typically, I don't think he would draw that hot and put on the pressure. But congrats. I mean,
Did he just like race him down, or did he have some clutch oasis?
just had all the blade flurries, and the Kano was drawing dead, and that's what you need to win the game, and that's what he drew.
So he just started walk him down, something like that.
But yeah, talking about the calling, I want to give a shout out to Team Blue Pitch again, because might have Alan Lau made top 16 of the Pro Tour, but they've been really smashing with this Victor list. You know,
Really, I'm glad you brought that up.
I'm not a big Victor fan, but I'm getting slowly converted because I like those zealous belting rousers, and that kind of style of Victor. I have a lot of kind of.
You know, Victor's an aggro deck, right?
Yeah, Victor's an aggro deck.
I feel there is this misconception that it's pure fatigue, and it isn't. You got big numbers, you know, your test of strength, you turn defense into offense, and Nova Chan made top 8. I think their Victor lists went something like 16-2 or 17-1 across the Pro Tour, and calling maybe it was Pro Tour CC rounds. I'm a big Victor stan over here. I got a little tip for the Victor players out there as well. When you're playing a game, when you win a test of strength and you get that gold, you just got to make the money every time you win a trials test of strength. No promises you won't get an unsportsmanlike conduct, but you know, whatever. You got to have some fun with it sometimes.
Talking about the best team in the world and the Pro Tour, I'd have to give a shout out to Wolfpack, Michael Fang, and Brody making the finals of the Battle Hardened.
Yep.
Yeah. So honestly, it kind of gets overshadowed by all of the hype of the Pro Tour and the calling, but the Living Legend format is shaking up nicely. There's quite a bit of diversity in the top 8 from the restrictions, and it's awesome to see heroes even like Peter Bundiziak. I'm not sorry if I butchered your name, but making the top 8 on Kano. You know, he's been consistently playing Kano in all the classic constructed, and he takes the deck, takes it to a Living Legend, and actually manages to top 8. So
that's pretty
sweet.
sweet.
Shout out to you. There were 4 chains in the top 8. So chains on the rise. If you're a Runeblade fan, definitely check out the Living Legend format. But yeah, Team Wolfpack taking it down.
Yeah, well done to them. And you know, just going back to Victor quickly.
Here we go.
But I just want to say, out of the most played decks, Victor had the second highest win rate at 54%. So, yeah, let's go Victor.
Yay.
So, moving on, we have a lot of events coming up as well. So we have Calling Phuket this weekend, and I believe ProQuest is starting like next week.
Yeah, and there's like 4, 5, 6 Battle Hardens or something.
There's
this
4 Battle Hardens as well coming up. So with the Calling Phuket, it'll be really interesting to see how the meta is there. Like, you know, we're going to see...
Can Dromai get over the line?
Exactly, you know, because if she will, she's going to win Calling Phuket.
Well, I think everyone's just like, this always happens, right? Every time there's a big event and then this hero is 4 points away from LL, everyone rallies and just like brings the deck to a big tournament and then tries to LL her.
Do you reckon there'll be like a documentary like The Last Dance?
I think there's a certain kind of prestige in being the hero that takes the hero. I mean, being the player that takes the hero to Living Legend, right?
Yes.
That's,
flying off into the sunset on dragon wings, one might say.
Yeah,
something like that. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see, like, you know, is there going to be more Dorthia after its breakout performance to play into some of the KOs? Are there going to be more Victors to try and combat the expectation of the Dorthias? No. You know,
Dream on, Mr. Glass.
There's enough Victors.
And then, you know, I don't know, like, I feel we probably will see a lot of Dromai, right? I feel there's going to be a lot more Dorinthia than there was. There's still going to be people playing the KO decks because obviously put 4 players in the top 8. It's a very good deck. Maybe we see a bit of Kasai after it wins the calling if people adjust the list. Kasai is actually like not bad into all 3 of those heroes.
And yeah, I mean, it's like Dromai has a bit of a hold on the metagame as well. I think it'll be interesting to see another kind of shift in the metagame just before the the Mistveil drops.
That's the biggest one, right? Like losing an illusionist from the meta is just huge. It
Massive.
completely shifts the meta.
Riptide tier 1.
Really opens things up. I'm going to put you guys on the spot quickly. Not full predictions, but 3 quick-fire predictions for calling Phuket. Most ripped hero, most ripped in top 8, and winning hero.
I'm going to completely shift my old predictions. I'm going to go KO.
Come on, man.
Okay. Boring.
Hey, I'm just looking at the results from previous tournaments.
Anyway, moving on to something more interesting.
It's not that interesting, man.
Okay.
Okay, well, I just think everyone's going to bring Dromai, so most rip going to be Dromai. I think most in top 8 is going to be Dorthia. I think a lot of people will bring Dorthia. She's really good, especially into Dromai, I think. And then winning hero, Dromai, hopefully. Hopefully she leaves and we can have a fresh meta.
I'm going to go, I think most ripped, I agree with you, Dromai. Most ripped in top 8, Dorthia.
Victor.
Winning hero, Victor Goldmane. Money. But then right after that, you're absolutely right. We have 4 battle hardens. We have Atlanta, Bidgosh.
Bidgosh. Yeah.
I've heard they're big fans of Pan Klasic.
Pan Klasic.
I can't get it right.
Massive shout out to organizers from Bidgosh because they made a real life metal, like iron forged Arcanite skullcap as part of the pricing. So this is amazing. Good on you guys.
That's so sick. Yeah, so we got Atlanta. Bidgosh, sorry. Then we got Battlehead in San Francisco and Valencia after that. So a lot of cool events coming up for people to play at. And yeah, I feel just a couple more things we can try cover off quickly. I think the Kayo Armory deck, I think it's quite interesting.
Yeah, I think Brutes are still a little bit underpowered, so I'm glad to give the Brute class a little bit more of a power boost.
I think one thing as well, Savage Sash, it's obviously a fantastic card, but I think there's definitely some discussion, like, is it a strict upgrade to Tunic? I'm not certain of that. I feel it's like a really excellent matchup piece to have right into certain aggro decks.
Yeah, I would say most of the time you would still run Tunic. I feel like because you are a value deck and you're trying to extract value from your turns, you really do need that Tunic. But I think in some matchups you would definitely have Savage Sash. And,
And I think it's so awesome if you just buy the deck and want to go play an Armory.
Exactly.
Like you just don't need Tunic. It's like back in the day with Katsu, or maybe these days, like if you're trying to build a deck, you can play Hard and Cross Trap, right? Instead of like Tunic, for example. And I think this is like a similar thing. You can play this card, go out, have a great time. And if you're like a hardcore serious player, you probably want to have this piece for your certain matchups, and maybe some people just play it over everything.
Definitely. It's so nice to just like buy a deck and be able to play then and there.
The other card is Strength Rules All. The sort of on hit destroys an attack action with less damage. Like, and it's interesting. Like, I think that's a cool card, but there's been people saying like, "Oh, Brute gets like its Knight CNC and stuff like that." Like, I think it's a very cool card, but like, there's certainly a lot of times where it might miss. You know, there's definitely a pattern of people not necessarily putting attack actions in Arsenal. You want to put like power cards and stuff in there as well. So I don't want to sell the card short, but at the same time, I feel like calling another CNC is a little bit much.
yeah, I think it's a bit much. I think you'll come to find that a lot of the time it's either just an equipment block or a 1-card block or no block at all, and it's just
Sometimes
fine.
strength doesn't rule much, you know. I think finally, one final thing is, we touched on it briefly, but the impact of Dromai hitting LL, which is almost, you know, if it doesn't happen at the calling this weekend, it's almost certainly going to happen at in the ProQuest upcoming season. I think one cool thing is like,
Professor's playable, right?
Definitely Declan Boston, but I think just the changes to the LL system, how heroes LL sort of immediately the week after when they hit points, I think that's quite a cool showcase of this happening. If it LLs in week 1 of ProQuest, then like the meta is just super fresh for the remaining weeks and for like the other battle hardens and stuff coming up. But it is kind of interesting, like one of KO's perceived good matchups leaves the format, although like it actually was quite close based on the stats.
Yeah.
And
I think, yeah, the classes like Assassin, Warrior, even Wizard kind of, it's kind of like opens it up a little bit more. There was just a few decks that kind of had that issue that you just kind of run into Dromai and it's it's just such a tough matchup, and I think it's really going to revitalize the metagame for a while before part of the Mistveil drops.
Yeah, and I feel like, maybe there could be. Do you feel like stuff like Dorthia, Kayo, maybe Victor, like I could be a bit of like the 3 new decks to target once Dromai goes?
It's possible. I'm not really thinking about what to target. I'm just glad that we finally get to see the showcase of like some of these less represented decks like Tickler Vossen and Azuri and
I think like
Arachne even.
Azalea maybe?
Yeah, just these decks are so fun to play and so cool to watch, and I feel like they just haven't been done justice in so long because Dromai's kept them down, but finally we get to see them in action again and get to see people innovate on the decks and actually see if there's like a really good build, because I'm sure people just haven't been giving them the time. Like,
for sure, and like surely my guy Tickler Vossen will come back through. They break the Ember Scourge. It's going. Like it would be So I think Azza is always a cool one. I wonder if like Prism, maybe stealth buff, if like some of the decks that start running poppers run less poppers, because Dromai goes. The one issue there is decks like Kayo and Victor just naturally run a ton. They don't need to bring any extra. But I will be very interested to see if Prism, if there's some cool builds out there now. Some that, So I think that pretty much wraps us up for this time. I probably talked for a little longer than Brian would like, but luckily he's stuck in the States for now. So
a little bit on part of the Mistveil.
Oh, of course. MST. So one of the biggest hype moments I heard at the Pro Tour was when MST got revealed. I believe Nu got the biggest shout outs. I think people just really love her mechanics and identity.
Huge identity.
And aesthetics and everything. So, a lot of big fans of Nu. I guess I'll just ask you guys, what hero are you most excited for out of MST?
Zen. Definitely Zen.
I am the biggest Enigma fan, and all the illusionist simps will be grateful that I am on the dev team.
I'm a little bit torn between, I really like playing Enigma and Nu. So I'm not really sure, but maybe I'll just say Nu so we got one of each,
Honestly, I have to say that props to James and Brian and everyone who had part in the design of the set, because I feel that the whole Transcend mechanic and the way Transcend works and how Cheer works is super innovative, and I can't wait for people to experience. This has been the first new talent that has been released all the way since Uprising. So it's been a while for a new talent, and honestly, it's completely opens up the game and new ways.
I think even more than that, like the way that people resonate with the set the most is through the art and the identity created through the art and design and storytelling. And I feel like that was done the best with MST.
It's so cool. Like, we sometimes get a little bit of a sneak peek of the art before the rest of the world, and honestly, straight up like my favorite art I've said it of all time. Like easy. Like the cards are just beautiful. Like it's so cool.
It's so good.
Yeah, so I guess that kind of wraps it up. Anyone have any final thoughts? Any comments? Kayo, you're saying you thought Victor was the best hero in CC? Is that? No.
Not in a long time, but yeah, can't wait for MST to drop.
Sweet as. Well, thanks everyone for tuning in, and like get out there to your Pro Quest coming up soon. I'll be tuning to the Call in Phuket this weekend. I'm super hyped for that, and all the battle hardens and everything coming up. And yeah, I feel like next time we do one of these, Brian will probably be back, so you get the adult in the room, not just 3 stupid devs. But that's it from us. We'll catch you next time.